first thing Hacksaw's got to do is give a big ho! Oh, come on, folks, let's go! Ho!
USA!
USA! USA! Don't get me fired up, brother, I'll tell you. Almost sounds like a library in here, it's so quiet, I'll tell you. But folks, yeah, thank you for that nice introduction.
No problem.
Folks who don't know, I'm Hacksaw Jim Duggan. I've been wrestling now professionally for over 36 years, and it's been a good business for me. So many folks know about wrestling, all the tragedies, high divorce rate, high death rate, high drug and alcoholism rate. Very, very tough business, but it's been a good business for me. I've been with my wife for almost 30 years. I never had to go to rehab for booze or drugs. Thank you. Thanks, folks. Put 2 girls through school, so I tell folks, you know, we're all not Scott Hall. Scott's a friend of mine, but obviously he had trouble in his choices in wrestling. But I'll give you a little bit of background. I'm originally from a small town in upstate New York called Glens Falls, where I played all high school sports. And actually, I won the New York State High School Wrestling Championship as a senior in high school. My shot put record from 1973 still stands today up in Glens Falls, 40 years later. I said, what a bunch of wimps up there, huh? But football was my main sport, and I was lucky enough to play my college football in Dallas, Texas for Southern Methodist University. Then I made the move to professional football. I was with the Atlanta Falcons in 1977, Toronto Argonauts in 78, and made the move to wrestling in 79. And of course, when I first started wrestling, I was Big Jim Duggan. I had short hair and clean shaven, and I wore a long gold bathrobe to the ring.
Big Jim.
Big Jim.
That's nice.
Yeah. Something really original, right? And actually, Vince McMahon Sr. calls me into the office, and he says, kid, you might have a future, but come up with something better than Big Jim and get rid of that gold bathrobe. So I said, well, I'll try something different. And I wore a mask for a while, and I wrestled as a convict. And I put little C's on my mask for the convict, which I thought was pretty clever back in the day. But all the fans were like, why'd you put those ears on your mask? I said, they're not ears, they're C's for the convict. So obviously the convict didn't work very well, so I evolved into Wild Man Duggan, where I wore a fur with chains on it and grew my beard real bushy, and that didn't work. So I evolved into Hacksaw, and after out of 36 years in wrestling, probably 33 of them I've been Hacksaw. And it's been a good deal, you know, the whole character, you know, nothing fancy about Hacksaw Jim Duggan, just a 2x4 and the flag of the United States of America. Give me a ho, guys. Ho! But I traveled from territory to territory. In the old days, there were a lot of small territories around the country. And what Vince McMahon did is he went to all the small territories, bought up all the top talent, brought us to New York, and started the WrestleMania series, and put a lot of smaller companies out of business. But WWE now, I do a lot of charity golf and other events with the NFL players. And it's always funny, I always joke with the NFL guys, I'm like, world champions? Where in the world have you guys been? You know, WWE goes all over the world. Just last year with them, I was down in Santiago, Chile, Lima, Peru, and Panama City, Panama. It's amazing the appeal of wrestling around the whole world. You know, in the 36 years I've wrestled, I've been lucky enough to wrestle in every state in the Union, every province in Canada, in 30 different countries. The appeal of wrestling is universal. But overall, it's been a very good business. A couple of my very good friends are gone now. My 3 best friends were Dr. Death Steve Williams, who passed away. Terry Gordy of the Fabulous Freebirds is also gone. And just recently, I lost my best friend, Roddy Piper, just passed a few months ago, God bless him. I don't know if any of you folks happen to watch the WWE Network and saw the reality show we did. It was called Legend House. And what they did was they took 8 wrestlers and put us in a house, actually a beautiful mansion, out in Palm Springs, California for 5 weeks. And they were expecting a drama, but they pretty much got a comedy out of the deal, you know. Piper and I didn't really know each other, and so when we get there, they said, well, you have to have a roommate. And I'm like, well, I haven't had a roommate since college. You know, what are you talking about? And they're like, and you're rooming with Piper. So the first 2 days, we just kind of eyeballed each other like, yeah, how you doing, buddy? But then we hit it off, and Roddy and I became best friends. Our family became friends. The fans called it the bromance that developed over it. It was true, because you could see the friendship grow over those 5 weeks. And on the other side of the coin, Tony Atlas and I almost had a fist fight. So we covered all the bases. Some good stories about the guys I traveled with. Of course, one of the head ushers in my wedding, one of my best friends in my life, is Jake the Snake Roberts. I have a lot of fun traveling with Jake. You know, we traveled all over the world together, and I'd just come in with my 2x4. I'd walk into the arena, and I said, can somebody find me a 2x4 and get him a 10-foot python? You know, he had to drag that 100-pound snake wherever he went. And it was a tough life for the snake. The snake would always try to carry it in a duffel bag, and the snake would always try to get out of the bag. And there's one time we're down here in the South, we're late for the show, and I'm driving very fast in a big rented Lincoln, and the snake was in the back seat. Boom, it got out of the bag. So I'm driving down the road, and I look in the mirror, and all of a sudden there's this huge, giant snake head over my shoulder. And people are like, well, you know, it's a python. They're not poisonous. I'm like, yeah, but it's a 100-pound snake with a mouth like that will bite you. So, of course, I slam on the brakes, and we go sliding into like a Cracker Barrel restaurant where all the folks are out there in the rocking chairs relaxing. We come sliding in with the car. We open up the back. Jake and I jump out. We open up the back door. We're fighting with this 10-foot snake. We stuff it back in the bag and drive off. So you know, to this day, those folks are going, you ain't going to believe it. These 2 guys had a giant snake.
Too bad YouTube wasn't a thing back then. That would be amazing.
Thank goodness YouTube wasn't around. Statute of limitations is not up yet. Another one, which is, you know, obviously kind of a bad story about Jake. We were in Detroit. We used to go out and party a lot back in the old days, and we came back. It was January. We went in and went to sleep. We woke up the next morning. There was about 6 inches of snow on the car. You know, we went out and we opened the trunk. There was my 2x4. There was Damien, frozen as stiff as my 2x4. We forgot the snake and left the snake in the trunk overnight. So Jake had to call Vince McMahon, and he's, you know, Vince wasn't very happy, but Jake said, well, I got a new pair of boots out of it anyway. But overall, like I said, it's been a good business. Does anyone have any questions in particular before we go any farther? Anything?
Here we go.
Sir.
We'll start right here and work our way over. How about that?
What was your favorite match that you wrestled in of all time?
Yeah, the favorite match, without question for me, because my character, I was never world champion, I was never tag team champion, never intercontinental champion. But being from upstate New York, a small town called Glens Falls, my dad, God bless him, would bring me down to New York City to go to Madison Square Garden for the circus and stuff. So as a young man to pull up in front of Madison Square Garden and see your name Hacksaw Jim Duggan versus Andre the Giant was a double whammy. Not only that I was able to, thank you. Not only was I able to wrestle main event in Madison Square Garden with over 20,000 people, but to be in there with Andre the Giant was a double whammy. And of course, Andre could be an irritable giant. You know, a lot of times I get on the airplane next to a businessman, and he'd say, "Boy, I had a rough day at the office." I look at him and, "Let me tell you, brother, I just got done with a giant." You know. But Andre actually elevated me from a mid-card guy to a main event guy. You know, he challenged, he was on TV, he challenges anybody to come out and face him. And of course, if there's a giant in wrestling, they're like, Duggan, come here. I have to wrestle every giant there is. So I ran down there and I got my chin on Andre's belly and I'm looking up at him like, I'm not afraid of you. And as he went to grab me, his thumb hit me in the lip. It knocked my lip off. It fell straight down. So now blood is just cascading down my chest, and Andre's got me by the throat, and he's choking me. Now I'm down on my knees. I feel around. I get my 2x4. Boom! I whacked the big giant between the eyes with the 2x4. He goes down like a huge redwood tree. Boom! WWF goes off the air. Me standing over Andre the Giant, covered in blood with my 2x4. Ho! And that moved me up to a main event guy, and you know, Andre did that for me. It was a favor. Oh, and doing the whole, just real quick, one of my good friends is Ric Flair, you know, and Rick always, woo! Exactly, yeah, woo, woo! And I'm like, Rick, are your trunks too tight or what? Any other questions, guys? Yeah.
Many people have said that pro wrestlers today are not as charismatic as they used to be. What do you think is missing from pro wrestlers today in the business as a whole?
Well, I think back in the day, there was a much more learning curve. You know, I wrestled for Mid-South, Georgia Championship Wrestling, Florida All-Star Wrestling, and you would go around to these smaller territories and perfect your craft because it is a learning business. The more you do it, the better you get at it. So you were already a pretty polished worker by the time you got up to WWE. But also now they have writers that write out everything. Instead of wrestlers coming up with the angles, they have professional writers from Hollywood that even write your verbiage for your interview, you know. And I was just up with WWE, and this young man came up and says, Mr. Duggan, here's your verbiage for your interview. And my verbiage for my house, some punk kid going to tell Hacksaw Jim Duggan how to cut his interview. And they're like, well, this is what we want you to say. So I said, well, send me my check.
That's right.
It's a different business nowadays. Still popular, though, but I think probably 90% of the folks I talk to today, and most of the folks I talk to, enjoyed the old WWF days, the golden age of wrestling.
Questions? Anybody have a question? I'm sure someone does. Let's go here. We'll work our way around. How about that?
I just wondered, we've seen Roddy Piper on TV, and he seems like a very nice guy. With you having a one-on-one, relationship with him behind the scenes, was he as nice in real life as he appeared to be on TV?
Yes, he was. And I think a lot of folks at the Comic-Con always comment, how much time he would spend. You see all, like it's a group of people. Different guys are different. Some guys sign an autograph and hand it to you. Sign an autograph and hand it to you. Roddy liked to visit with the fans, talk to them, get feedback. He was genuinely a nice guy. He was a gentleman, which is rare in our business. And he was pretty wild back in the day, but he changed his life around. He quit drinking completely. He was a good family man. He's one of the guys I would point out that took care of his money, took care of his family, and took care of himself. And it was a tragedy the way he passed, but as a wrestler, and you see so many guys gone, at least he went in his sleep at home, not in some hotel room, and I guess if you got to go, but a lot of fun with Roddy. We did that Legend House, and I tell you, the Hillbilly Jim and Jimmy Hart called us the night crawlers because everybody else went to bed at 9, And the deal with rooming with Piper, I could get away with anything. So the first week we're there, the house is kind of dead. There's nothing going on. So I got up one night and I waited till everybody went to bed, and I was throwing all the pool furniture in the pool for a big whodunit, And of course the next morning I walk in the kitchen and Pat Patterson and Gene Okerlund and Jimmy Hart are like, somebody really screwed up. They threw all the pool furniture in the pool. He's going to shut down the whole house. He's going to ruin the whole show. And I was like, well, Piper wasn't in his bed last night. Oh, that Piper! Yes, sir.
Do you have a favorite wrestler today and why? And a second part, what do you think of the training program that they're using in NXT?
Cool. Good questions. There are two wrestlers that really stand out that I like a lot. Dolph Ziggler. I think Dolph has the marquee look. To be the main marquee guy for WWE, you want a handsome young guy, a lot of blonde hair, a lot of white teeth, good body. He kind of fits that look. Plus, I got to beat him up when he was with the Spirit Squad, so I enjoyed that. But as another guy I think who could have been wrestling back in the WWF days is Bray Wyatt. I think that character fits well with, I can see Bray Wyatt versus Junkyard Dog, you know. That'd be a good match.
Here we go.
I gotta ask, for you, a former professional football player, and with all your wrestling experience, which did you would be tougher training for, football team or the stuff you have to do in the ring?
Well, of course, football is a lot more conditioning, a lot more running and stuff. But I think some of the misconceptions about wrestling, the first one is people say, well, you guys are all good friends, aren't you? I said, yeah, we all compete for the same money. We're real good friends.
You should Google Montreal Screwjob if that's what you think.
It's a very competitive business. I tell the young guys, a couple came up today saying they want to be in the WWE. I said, well, that's great. Chase your dreams, because who would have ever thought Daniel Bryan would become a big WWE star? But realize, this year there's 1,500 NFL football players. There's 1,000 NBA basketball players. There's 120 WWE wrestlers on contract. It's television. It's more competitive than sports. Because not only do you have to have the athletic ability, but you have to be able to talk on camera, and also you have to be able to travel a lot. It's a lot of sacrifice. In our family, like I said, I've been with my wife for 30 years. Our Christmas, our holidays, our birthdays are when we're together. It's not the day on the calendar. It's when our whole family's together. That's when we celebrate.
Here we go.
Yes, sir. What are you doing nowadays? Do you just do tours? Do you do USO tours? Do you just,
I do all kinds of things. Actually, I do a lot with the military. I love the military guys. And, of course, a lot of the young men and women in the military now grew up with me. They were kids when during my heyday. And, of course, that's something the WWE never got a whole lot of credit for. During the Iraq War, Vince McMahon would take the whole show, fly right into Baghdad, go to Camp Victory in Baghdad, and put on a show. And I'll just tell you a quick little anecdote. Big Ron Simmons, one of my best friends, a college football Hall of Famer, just a really tough, hard-nosed man. Well, they used to take us to those FOBs, those forward operating bases, and they'd have to take a helicopter out there. So they fly Big Ron Simmons out in a helicopter, and they land kind of hard. And all the Army guys are out there with their rifles, and the sergeant's like, get in the bunker, get in the bunker. So Big Ron, he runs into the bunker, and the guy looks at Ron, he goes, are you supposed to be here? And Ron's like, no, I'm not supposed to be here, get me out of here.
Nice.
But that's one thing that WWE does, they really support the military.
Here we go.
Okay, this is referring to the future of the NXT. What superstars are you most looking forward to having a successful future in the WWE, and why?
Well, I really don't watch that much wrestling anymore. My comment is, after 36 years of wrestling, that'd be like a butcher watching him cut meat on his day off.
Right.
I don't watch a lot of wrestling this stage, but the NXT guys, and that goes back to the other question that I missed, was the way they train guys now. They have the training facility in Orlando, and they have coaches, and they train the kids. But I think that's where you're just getting one avenue. You get one type of wrestling. You don't have guys coming from Oregon. You don't have guys coming from Texas. You take them all, and so it's all kind of homogenized. It's all pretty much the same guys. But the kids, I think nowadays, in general, are more professional. You go into the room, they all got their laptops or their cell phones. Back in the day, we'd all be playing cards and out party. And actually, the WWE, Vince McMahon, because back in the early days, they made us quit playing cards. Because you'd be in the back playing cards, you're like, is that my music? And one time I used to carry my cards and my knee pads. I mean, we'd have some serious gin games, and I put my deck of cards in my knee pad, and I forgot all about it. And I went out and I had my match. I dropped the big knee, and all of a sudden cards were flying everywhere. It was like a magic trick, you know. And of course, the agent was very upset. You know, the producer. He's like, "What happened? Where did those cards come from?" I go,
I don't know.
"Somebody must have threw them in the ring. I don't know."
It was cool, cards. Do you think, though, that sort of takes it on another turn, though? Because, you know, before Vince McMahon went around and bought up all of these companies and groups, there were more personalities. There were different personalities. You got people who came from Canada who had a different personality from those from Memphis. And now it's really like they're all the same product. I mean, not everyone is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, you know, but it's almost like you can't find that many guys who would fit in the 80s now. You know, it's like the same type of guy over and over and over.
Well, again, we go back to the writers, and you know, like Hacksaw Jim Duggan, that's mine. I own the character. I developed the character.
Right.
If Vince McMahon creates your character, then he owns your character. A good example is Big Boss Man or Brutus the Barber Beefcake.
Right.
When they left the WWF, they went to WCW. They had to change their name because Vince owns that character. So now they have a group of writers. They come up with an idea for a character. They look through the roster and say, okay, this guy will work. And they put that character on that guy. So I think you kind of lose the genuineness of the character.
Right. I made Brutus mad once at a show we did. I reversed the Barber Beefcake, and it was not good. He had the clippers, and it was...
Well, it's tough to do that beefcake deal once you hit 60.
I hear that.
Big hairy guy, works at 30, works at 60.
Yeah, that's right. Questions? Here we go. Let's go back here. I'll get you next.
I saw you more than a couple of times in the Coliseum here back in the early mid '80s. I was just wondering if you had any good stories, or who, like back in the day when you guys had your real big rivalries that kind of carried over from territory to territory, which one drew the most heat?
That's a good question.
Well, I think DiBiase and I wrestled the $1 Million Man, you know, hundreds, if not thousands of times all over the world. But, you know, back in the Mid-South days, you know, the blood. And people say, well, isn't it a blood capsule? I'm like, no, it's a razor blade. I wish it was a blood capsule. You know, he's trying to get one of those NFL guys to take a razor blade and cut their heads open. But anyway, Ted and I had been wrestling every night, you know, twice on Saturday and twice on Sunday. Our head was just hamburg from getting the juice every night. And of course, you'd be sitting on the airplane with a bandage on it, and one of your friends come by and goes, "Is that still sore?" And of course, it'd open up and start bleeding again. But anyway, we're here in Jackson, and there was a bad crowd. It was a Sunday afternoon. There was hardly anybody here. And so Ernie Ladd, the big cat Ernie Ladd, was the producer. And so Ted and I go in, and we're like, "Ernie, our heads are hamburg. You know, we don't need the double juice tonight. Can we just forget the blood?" Ernie's like, yeah, okay, no juice tonight. So great. So Ted and I go out there. We had the standard spot: 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Dunk. I give him an ass bump, we call it. So we get out there, and 1, 2, 1, 2, boom. I hit Teddy in the nose. It's like I cut his throat. Blood just comes pouring out his nose. He looks at me, he's like, "Sorry, Ted."
Here we go.
That's an example. It's always easier to wrestle someone you know and trust, because, you know, accidents happen in the ring. People say, "I saw you miss that guy by that much." I said, "Yeah, but did you see when I hit him by that much?" It goes that way. So if it's somebody you trust, like Ted or Jake or Steve Williams, somebody like that, I knew it was an accident. It was Matt Bourne or Mad Dog Buzz Sawyer. If he hit me hard, then I'd hit him back hard. And it escalates sometimes. And the business is called, if you get a potato, you give a receipt.
Nice.
I know it's hard to pick just one, but do you have a favorite wrestler of all time?
Favorite wrestler of all time?
I think his name's Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
That good-looking guy with long hair and a beard. I think everybody's got their opinion on who the best ever is. And, of course, you got to think of Ric Flair, The Rock. I think it was Stunning Steve Austin until I beat him so bad he had to shave his head and change his name. But in my opinion, the best there is Hulk Hogan. I get along with Hulkster, and I tell you, the guy gets a lot of bad press, but he's not a bad guy. And I walk through the airports with Cena and everybody else. Hulk Hogan is the only guy, if you're making a connecting flight, they take Hulkster off the plane down to Jetway, they put him in a car and drive him to his next flight. Because even if they put him on a golf cart going through the airport, people are like, it's Hulk Hogan, it's Hulk Hogan. He's a very big man, he's 6'7", very recognizable, and he revolutionized our business.
I think we got time for one more. Hey, I've not heard from you. Let's do this.
The first Royal Rumble. Back when that sort of thing had never even been thought of before, what was like the vibe when someone just comes up to you and tell you, you and 29 other guys are just going to go out there and fight for an hour? Especially since you won the thing.
Yeah, well, they changed it up by, before a battle royal was pretty common. And you just start out with 30 guys in the ring or however many in the ring. But this was a guy would come down with every 2 or 3 minutes. And now it's one of the marquee events of the WWE. But back then, even though I won it, I didn't realize that's probably the biggest feather in my cap now, folks remember. But back then, we did the show, we got in the car, and we drove to another show the next night. We didn't realize how big it would become. But just in a quick battle royal story, I've got to tell you this one, folks. We're in there was the Ultimate Warrior, who not a lot of guys got along with Warrior, but it was Ultimate Warrior, me, Boss Man, and Kurt Hennig. So me, Boss Man, put Ultimate Warrior in the corner. We're beating up Ultimate Warrior. Kurt Hennig rolls on the apron, and Warrior used to wear all those nylon straps hanging off his bicep and his legs. So Kurt rolls under the ring, or under the apron, and he ties one of the nylon ropes from Ultimate Warrior's bicep to the top rope. So we run off, we take off, as the Warrior's like, I break. Nylon. It ain't breaking. So now it goes around his arm. Now it's cut off his blood on his arm. And he's in the corner. Oh! He's screaming like a banshee. Chief J. Strongbow had to come down with a jackknife and cut him loose. So me, Boss Man, and Kurt got a free trip up to Stamford, Connecticut for a Vince meeting. That was before they videotaped everything. There was a lot of horseplay in the ring. That soft spot in the lower middle of small of your back. You'd be wrestling, you reach over, whacks! Ow! A lot going on in the ring.
You got a book I saw on your table.
Yes,
tell me a bit about that.
A book, there's a gentleman's got it. Hacksaw, the Jim Duggan story. Catchy title. I sent the book people 3 or 4 different titles. The Cycle the Ring. Tough Life, Tough Guy. They'll go with Hacksaw, the Jim Duggan story. But again, like I said, a more positive look at pro wrestling. You just run through the names of guys who are gone. But like I said, it's been a good business for me and for other guys. People hear the car wrecks of Scott Hall, Jake Roberts, but guys like Tito Santana, Roddy Piper, guys that are regular family men that took care of their lives and took care of their business. So there is good stories to wrestling, even though you don't very seldom hear them.
Right. Let's give it up for Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Make sure you go by and...
wait a minute, guys. Wait a minute. Let's do it together.
Ho!
That's some good hoeing going on.
That's right. Make sure you go check him out at his table.
Thank you, folks. Thanks very much. Enjoy the con.